Hello and welcome into episode 14 of the Stomp the Bus podcast. I am your host, Mark Harris, along with Colton Dodgson, who's decided to impersonate me for this call. How you doing, man?
Good, Mark. It feels good to walk a mile in your shoes. Happy to be back.
I think I have smaller feet than you. I don't. That must have been pretty uncomfortable.
Don't sell yourself short, Mark.
No, I think I literally have smaller feet than you.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Maybe it was uncomfortable, Mark. But you know what? That's what you deal with every day. So,
yeah.
if I'm not putting myself through that, then I'm not truly trying to have the Mark Harris experience, which I think is a valuable experience to have.
All right. Well, speaking of being uncomfortable, ASU lost lost to USC over the weekend. Final score was 42-25. And you know what? Like, obviously, you never want to lose, but considering what I thought this game could have been, I was I don't want to say impressed, but I was okay with the performance that ASU put on the field against the Trojans.
Yeah, I mean they scored points, but USC's defense is awful. Um,
True.
they really had that one blip um against Oregon
Oregon
State
State.
where they
Yeah.
just completely shut them down, which was out of the ordinary for USC because they are not good defensively. But either way, 25 points is good regardless of who it's against. This is the number 6 team in the country. Um, but I mean, obviously they were going to come in and score a ton of points too.
Right.
They score 42. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
Caleb
think
Williams needs to be in the NFL. Like, that dude does not look like a college quarterback. Like, he looks better than a lot of the
yeah,
guys in the NFL already.
yeah, no, he's going to be good. And Jordan Addison is obviously really good too. 8
Yeah.
catches for 105 yards. So it's not like anybody thought that ASU would have any sort of answer for this team. They kind of hung with them for a little while before USC
Yeah.
really pulled away and put some distance between them and ASU. But yeah, I mean Eric Gentry gets the better of his former school here. He wins the revenge game. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was really like I
I
hope
I
Eric
know.
Gentry has a good career, but like he wasn't the reason USC won. That was the other
No,
Trojan
I
player.
know, Mark. Thank you.
Uh, yeah.
I know he had that circled on his calendar, and he's like, I'm gonna show them."
I mean,
So
he probably did. Probably not like showing them like out of malice because he chose to leave. It's not like they kicked him out, but
yeah, exactly.
regardless, I don't
That
want to
that was kind
litigate
of a
the
joke, Mark.
Eric Gentry stuff. But I guess the thing that I liked about this game for ASU was that if they play the way they did against the Trojans, if they just bottle that up and play like that for the rest of the season, they're gonna they're probably gonna finish like they're gonna win a few games in the Pac-12. Like it if they had played that way, and I think they kind of played that way against Oklahoma State too, because both of these games were kind of similar, where ASU was in the game for a half, three quarters, and then talent won out and the other team won. But if ASU just plays like a competent, disciplined game, like they did against NAU as well, um, they'll be able to beat Stanford. They'll be able to beat Colorado. Maybe U of A, and then maybe you pick off an Oregon State at home or something. Maybe you pick off a win somewhere else. Uh, but the and I'm just excited to see that just in terms of just watching this team for the rest of the year. I mean, we were both at the Utah game. That was off an awful performance by them. And then I was at Eastern Michigan game. Obviously, we know what happened there. Uh, if that team had showed up for the rest of the year, then I could easily see them losing to Colorado and having a total just 1-11 year that just is awful. Not like going 4-8 or 5-7 is something to brag about, but in college football, there's no benefit to losing games. There's no draft at the end of the year, so you might as well fight to go 5-7 or 4-8 than
Wait, there isn't?
1-11. Um,
I
so
First I'm hearing of this. I was gonna say this is good for their draft stock, but
no, no
now I
tanking,
don't know what they're playing for.
just to improve, I guess, for the few
Yeah,
guys who I don't know. I mean, teams change all the time throughout the year, and uh, obviously, like they weren't going to beat USC and they weren't going to beat Utah, but I mean, look, they gave USC a way more of a fight than Utah. I mean, it was what 20. It was 21. Yeah, it was 21-17 USC at half, and if you're a USC fan, you did not expect that. You thought you were going to be up by probably 2, 3 touchdowns at half. Um, and ASU at least made them sweat. And as we look forward to the Washington game on Saturday, that's kind of what I'm hoping for against the Huskies as well.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. This is kind of a get right spot for Washington after that loss to UCLA. The spread is 14 points. That seems about right.
Yeah, it
Um,
does.
I think you or Washington covers that. I don't know. I don't know how competitive ASU is going to be in this game, which is weird because I mean, but I guess it's NAU. But I'm just looking back, even in that first half against the Oklahoma State game, I'm like, this is going to be at the very least a solid defense, and we've gotten anything but that lately. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in this game. Washington's defense gives up 23.2 points per game. Obviously, they got torched by UCLA.
Yeah.
So this seems like the wrong time to play Washington. I don't really think this is going to be a close game. I
Um,
Nothing like the USC game, I don't think, but we'll see. I mean, hey, Mark, I've been wrong before.
it's true. One of us picked ASU to beat Utah this year, so
Hey, that was my Hail Mary sort of preseason, could see it happening. I didn't know that they were going to lose to Eastern Michigan, Mark. So one of us picked them to beat Eastern Michigan, you know? So
one of us did, and another of us did too.
prove it. You can't
um,
prove it.
yeah. So it's definitely going to be tough. I mean, Washington is a killer offense. Even in their bad game last week, they still scored 32 points. Uh, Penix is really good. And look, I think ASU's defense actually played better than the 42 points would indicate last week. Just because, and when I mean played better, I mean like play like more disciplined because they had so many opportunities to sack Caleb Williams in the backfield, and obviously they played really well. They would have made those sacks, and that would have led to less points. But it seemed like they were in the right place more often, and you definitely didn't see that against Eastern Michigan. Um, so that's kind of where I don't think that ASU is going to win this game. But I think of the three ranked, or not the three, of the four ranked teams they will have played uh, by the end of this game. I think that this is their best chance for a win. Um, just because ASU, look, their strength is the rushing attack, and UW was brutalized by that last week against UCLA. And look, I mean, I know you can make defensive adjustments, but fixing your rushing defense, both making huge changes to it, probably not going to happen in a week. So I think I'd give ASU like a 5% chance to win this game. Um,
That seems very generous of you, Mark.
yeah, I know. Well, I mean, it's college football. Like Missouri almost beat Georgia last week. Like weird stuff happens, and I do agree with you though that like playing UW after they lost definitely makes this more challenging for ASU. Because if UW had, beaten UCLA in like a offensive score fest and won 43-40, uh, they're probably not coming in to Tempe quite as like desperate. and I feel like like you mentioned earlier, they're definitely going to want to get back against a worse team than them.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity to do that. Obviously, they have to, go on the road, but it's not like that hurt Utah much. I mean, you were there, you saw what that stadium was like. It was almost all Utah fans, at least in our section. So
Well, the thing with the Utah performance is that I'll give them some level of slack on that, just because.
it was the week that Herm got
Yeah,
fired, everything like that. I get that, but I mean, Eastern Michigan came in there and embarrassed them too. So
right.
I don't know. I think this is the perfect spot for Washington.
And I guess what my point is, like, I just don't think in the Eastern Michigan game it was clear that the effort just wasn't there. To
Yeah.
get ran for that much by a not very good Group of Five team. I mean, Eastern Michigan hasn't been killing it since they won that game. And then the Utah game, just the craziness of a new coach and adjusting to life after Herm Edwards and stuff like that. So I think, like, and that gets back to my point of, if ASU plays like they did against NAU, Oklahoma State, USC, then they have a chance to win this game, even though UW's a better team, just because uh, they'll be playing more like sound football, more energized. Um, I mean, I guess I don't know. Like, I don't think they're gonna win, but Tempe is a tough place for UW to play. Like, it's been a long time since UW has actually won uh, down in Tempe,
So
and
they'll win by 17 instead of 35.
yeah, I mean, I don't think they would win by 30. UW's defense is not that good, but we'll see. Um,
Take the
yeah,
over.
UW. The last time UW won on the road at ASU, I want you to guess what year that was.
2008,
Nope, you got to go down.
2005,
Lower,
2003.
lower.
Oh, 2001.
Yep,
That's a long
2001.
time. It's a
That's a
really long
long.
time.
That's a ridiculous streak uh, for ASU to just keep winning at home like that. And some of it's circumstantial. There have been a lot of bad UW teams over the years too that have come down, or just average ones that lost. But I mean, as someone who grew up in the Northwest, like, the weather is always going to be a shock if you come from, you know, mild October Western Washington weather all the way down to Tempe, and it's going to be like 90 degrees on Sunday, which, if you're in Arizona, that feels great, but if you're just coming off the plane for the first day, that is a shock to the system. Um,
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I think that will make somewhat of a difference. It's obvious, like, you see in the NFL, these games down in Miami, guys are cramping up like crazy. It's not going to be like that because there's not the humidity, but I think the heat makes it. I think it just makes things a little more difficult for a team like UW. Um, Maybe, I mean, it probably won't. Neither of us expect ASU to actually win this game, but uh, I guess my whole point is, if ASU plays like they did against USC, Oklahoma State, and NAU, this game can be like kind of competitive, and ASU can maybe lose by like 10 points or something, and they at least look like a oh, competent college football team, even if they're not a good one.
That's very kind of you to say about them.
I mean, I guess I don't know. Like, I was a lot more encouraged from what I saw against USC than you seem to be.
No, I mean it obviously keeping it close and everything like that is great. I just USC's defense has been terrible from the jump. So I
Yeah,
expected ASU to score points. I mean, it kind of went like it wasn't anything outside of the realm of expectation for me. I think the only deviation might have been how close it was at halftime. Um, that that's like the only blip for me. But everything else in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's probably what it should have looked like. USC's defense is bad. Their offense is great. Um, and yeah, that's basically what you got. It's the perfect spot to blast the over, and that was
right,
kind of my vested interest in it,
right.
which was good. But yeah, I mean, Obviously it's encouraging after the performance against Utah. Maybe it's a sign of progress under Shaun Aguano. Maybe they're starting to round out a little bit and settle into this new, I guess, routine, new system. Um, and that could be progress. USC was never a juggernaut defensively, and I was thinking that
Right.
obviously they'd score points. But yeah, who knows? Maybe it's a sign of progress being that close to a team on the road. It's number 6 in the country. At half is a step in the right direction. Definitely. Who knows? But I think like you said, Washington's defense not great. They just got torched by UCLA. UCLA is a good offensive team,
Yeah.
but the opportunity is definitely there for ASU to score some points. I just don't think they'll be able to score enough of them. And in this game, you need to score more points than your opponent to win the game. And
Very
that's
true.
why you listen to this podcast to get little tidbits like that.
That's why you play to win the game.
Yeah, you
Wise
play to
man
score
once said that.
points and in turn win the game. Correct.
Yeah. Uh, I guess where I differ with you in regards to USC is I think that them only losing like losing the way they did, like I thought it could have been a lot worse, like could have been even with USC's bad defense. Like Eastern Michigan has a bad defense, you know.
Yeah. But
Um
that's a completely different like that Eastern Michigan game, as humiliating as it was, kind of just feels like you have to throw it away.
yeah,
Like Herm Edwards was completely checked out. The whole
the
staff
whole
was
team.
completely checked out. Nobody was trying. It was obvious nobody was trying to win that game. Nobody cared enough to win that game. So now you have a completely different, I guess, leader, a different face of the whole operation, and Shaun Aguano, and um, I think that might start. We might see a little bit of development with that like so far. It could be progressing a little bit. But that Eastern Michigan game, I mean, they didn't want to play football. So
Right.
it's like how it's a tough metric to sort of use when talking
Yeah.
about it. But based on the progression from Utah to SC, um Utah just seems to be in a class of their own. And that Florida loss, it just seems further and further away with every win. I was a big Oregon
Yes.
State fan. I mean, coming into the year, I've really enjoyed watching them this
Yeah, that was
year.
dominant.
Yeah, and they humiliated Oregon State, and that's one of the better. I mean, throw the USC game away, I guess, because that was 17-10. I think was the final, right? Something like that. Just
17-14, something like
yeah,
that.
something weird. Just a complete outlier, but Oregon State offensively, I think they may have lost their quarterback early in that game, but still just wasn't even close. And Utah continues to impress me in the way that they shut ASU down right after Aguano comes in. Like that's not really shocking because Utah is just this juggernaut. USC obviously offensive juggernaut. So it's tough to gauge where they're at because of the level of teams that they've
Yeah.
played.
Yeah.
You're looking at that and you're like, where are they really? Because this is the number, what are they? 11, the number 11 team in the country and the number 6 team in the country, whatever it is, back to back weeks. And how do you
Number
really
21
gauge where
this
this
week.
team is?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good point with Washington. Is Washington's obviously another nationally ranked team, a pretty good offensive team, all of these things. But I think they're not really in the stratosphere that Utah and USC are. So maybe we get a better sort of temperature check of where ASU is because I think it's extremely tough to gauge
Yeah.
what this team even is right now because of the teams that they've had to play.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like, look, most likely ASU, because after this game they have a bye. Most
Mhm.
likely they're entering the bye at 1-5. You know,
Yes.
but
Mhm.
and I'm whatever. I'm going to sound like a homer. I don't think they would be depending on how they lose this week. Depending on how they lose, if they lose at all. Um, but let's just say they lose, and let's just say they lose by like 10 points or something. I think
You gave them a
that
95% chance to lose.
Yeah.
So let's say in the 95th percentile, what's happening? Or does
What
that
do you
make
mean?
sense? I don't know.
No.
What happens in the scenario, in the very likely scenario that they lose?
And they
What was your point?
My point is that they go into the bye at 1-5. And if they lose like a somewhat competitive game, I wouldn't be like, oh, this team's gonna lose the rest of the games this whole season. Like it's just weird how the schedule broke down that possibly the only ranked opponent you'll play all year, you play in 4 of your first 6 games.
Yeah, very
Like,
front-loaded schedule.
and
But I
and
think Colorado, obviously, they just fired their coach. They're still going to be terrible. Um, I, I mean, they ASU, like, I don't want to say they'll be favored in that game,
in
but
Colorado,
yeah,
oh, I think
that,
they will.
that might be the closest. It'll be a close spread, if anything. I don't know. They'll probably be favored. Colorado's terrible, but
It
that's
depends. So ASU plays Stanford on the road before they go to Colorado. It depends how ASU
yeah,
does in that game. Because I think
yeah,
ASU and Stanford are very, I think they're similar in the sense that like they're just both going to be bad teams, but probably not as bad as Colorado.
yeah. That
They're just kind
makes
of run of the
sense.
mill bad teams, where Colorado was like historically bad. And I mean, I think they've lost every game by double digits,
Yeah.
which
No,
is
they're
just bad.
terrible. I've made a lot of money just fading them every week. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
Um, but anyways, I'm like I said, I just I'm hoping this team can just keep up the competitive play where you can tell they showed up to the game. That's the thing with the Eastern Michigan game. They just didn't show up. At
Yeah.
the Washington State game last year, that was just a dark mark on their season. They didn't show up to play, you know. And that's like I just don't want to see any more of that, where it's just like completely uncompetitive.
Yeah.
Um, and based on what I saw against USC, I'm encouraged, just with the level of just discipline, effort, all the corny stuff that coaches talk about. But I was glad to see that was improved, and you know, if some weird stuff happens and they play with that type of consistency and competitiveness and that, like, then in a weird, fumble, whatever, just weird stuff happens, then there's a way that they can beat UW. But again, I would
Yeah.
not I would not pick them to win that game at all.
No,
UW,
definitely not.
yeah, like
Dude,
like you mentioned, they're a tier below USC and Utah, but that doesn't mean they can't beat ASU. Like, just because you're not a top 10 team doesn't mean you're not. They're still a ranked team. They're still good. And that passing attack is going to be really tough for ASU to face. Um, Look, like UW's receivers, they don't get the same level of pub as the USC wide receivers, and rightly so. USC's wide receivers have one of them won the freaking Bolitnikoff last year, and super high recruits, and they played in Oklahoma, whatever. All the notoriety they had from transferring in. UW's guys are a little more under the radar, but they're still um, really good. They've done really well against they like UW's offenses showed up every single game. It's really just Penix threw 2 bad picks. I want to say in the second quarter of their loss to UCLA, and that's the difference when you're facing a team like UCLA that has a really good offense and can torch you. Like,
yeah.
the difference is, like, even if Penix has a game like that, I just don't know if ASU will be able to actually beat them.
Yeah.
I think ASU could easily lose like a 37-24 type of game.
Yeah, I could see that. I was just gonna say, looking at the Washington. Oh, it's doing that thing again. The Washington UCLA game. I was watching that game, and that Jake Bobo guy is a
Yeah.
monster. Have you watched him play?
I watched a little bit of that game and saw him make
His
some plays. Yeah.
his ability to run routes for a tight end is like next level. Just watching some of the routes that he was running, he had Washington DBs just like spinning.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe that's an opportunity for Messiah Swinson in this game. right after they just got torched by another tight end. Obviously, he's probably not on Jake Bobo's level, but maybe there's a window there. Maybe ASU's looking at some ways to exploit that and do what UCLA did with their versatile tight end. But
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Elijah Badger had a great game. He's he's really come on this season. Like he has been the
yeah,
bright spot, and he looks like a legitimate like
when they needed one too, when they
yeah,
needed somebody to step up.
right. Because I mean, it was a huge area of weakness, and it's you can see this season. It's not like there. It's an area of strength this season. So yeah, I guess just kind of wrapping up my thoughts. I can see ASU playing a competitive-ish type game and just not getting completely blown out.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're going to be, at least based on what we saw in UCLA, they'll be competent offensively. Maybe competent is a stretch, but they'll be, let's say, serviceable offensively for the rest of the year. Which, I mean, if your defense shows up one night and just completely shuts a team down, that could be the difference right there. But offensively, I feel a little more encouraged right after seeing what they did against USC. I obviously I'm really low on USC's defense, but still, number 6 team in the
Right.
country, doing what they did. Yeah, it was definitely impressive.
Well, and the other thing is, and this is why if they continue to play this way,
Why'd you say it like that?
um, because I'm a weirdo, that's why. Uh,
This is true.
if they continue to play like they did against Oklahoma State, USC, they don't play that many more like good defenses. UW is not that great of a defense. Probably better than USC, but just ASU will have its chances against them. Then it's Stanford. Okay, Stanford's not a good defense. Colorado, not a good defense. UCLA, even like UCLA is going to be a tough team to beat, but they don't have a good defense. Um, U of A at the end of the year. I mean, Cal put up 50 points on U of A. Like they don't have a good defense, and so going on the road to play Wazoo, that'll be tough because their defense is pretty solid, and Oregon State's defense is solid as well. But you play them at home. But I guess my point is like I think when by playing Oklahoma State and Utah already, I think they've faced the toughest defenses they're going to face this whole year.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. They've had the gauntlet. You kind of already alluded to that, but playing all of these guys so early on is tough.
It's just a weird like schedule the way it's shook out because there's a very different world where if for whatever reason let's just say the schedule was oh you start out with Colorado on the road and then you host Oregon State after that. It's like instead of going Utah, USC, UW, like if the tougher games were more spread out in the schedule, then there's a chance that ASU just has a different record right now, and we're talking about them differently. But
Yeah.
it all shakes out at the end of the year, I guess. But
Yeah, if only they had to play the Titan that is Eastern Michigan later in the season.
revenge game.
Yeah, this is true.
But anyway, I'm this team is what it is this year, and for me, like I'm just hoping the guys like I just hope they have fun for the rest of the year. Like ultimately you're playing sports and like
That's
the
very
initial
sweet of you,
goal of it
Mark.
is to have fun, you know.
That is very sweet of you.
Yeah. I'll bring them orange slices after the game too. So
I'm sure they'd really appreciate that. You're just standing outside of the gate, holding a bag of oranges up so they know that you've brought them.
with my
No,
name on it.
once they see what I have, they'll let me in. I don't need a
Yeah.
credential.
I'd be George Costanza where they have to know they're coming from me, with like the tip.
Yeah, there you go.
Point
Very,
reference right there.
very good reference, Mark.
Yeah. Uh, so we'll see what happens against UW. I will say this: if ASU can beat UW and enter the bye at 2-4, I think they make a bowl game.
Ooh, 6-6.
Yeah.
That's what you have to be, right?
Yep.
Did they change that? No? Okay. 6-6. Is there a path to 6-6? I just don't see it.
So the path would be, I gotta pull up ASU schedule. This is great audio right now.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
pulling it up too. I
So
know this week we have
let's
both
just
agreed
say, okay,
this week's a loss,
right. Okay,
right?
no, but my point was, if they win this game, then they can,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
All right. So
not no, they're
they're
not
two
making
and
a
four
bowl if
now.
they start out 1-5.
Okay. But
Yeah.
what would be the path still if they win in this game? If they
If
beat
yeah,
Washington, if they upset Washington, they're 2-4. So they obviously have to beat Stanford and Colorado, right?
yes, 100%.
Four
Like
and four.
so okay, let's just say whatever weird things happen and ASU somehow wins this game. Get to two and
Right.
four, you enter the bye at 2-4. After that, October 22nd, you're at Stanford. You have to win that
That's
game.
non-negotiable. Have to win that.
Then the next week at Colorado, you double have to win that game. Then on November 5th, you host UCLA. That's probably a loss, but I don't know. I feel like ASU just kind of matches up well against UCLA. Or they did last year at least, but I guess they lost so much.
So
It just depends. Like
they're at 4-4 going into the UCLA game. So they'd have to go 2-4 against UCLA, Washington, or 2-2. Sorry,
yeah,
2-2 over against UCLA, Washington State, Oregon State, and Arizona to make a bowl game if they beat Washington this week.
it would be tough. It would be really tough.
Yeah, that's. I mean, even if they beat UCLA and they need to get one more win, I would say it probably comes against U of A.
Yeah.
But oh man, I
All
have
right. Let
no idea.
me
It
let me
already
revise this.
no. It's okay because it's a good it's a good point. Is it even possible? And this is all this whole scenario is predicated on them beating number 21 Washington.
Exactly. So it's yeah, no, this is all hypothetical. Um, but let's just say they beat Washington again, completely hypothetical. They beat them and they beat Stanford and Colorado. Um, or I guess my point is if they beat UW and go to 2-4, they at least have a chance at a bowl game, like a legitimate chance. Where you can
Yeah,
squint and be like, oh, if we upset Oregon State at home, or maybe we squeak out a win on the road at Wazoo, or something like things that could happen, but don't have a good chance of happening, unlike beating Utah or beating USC. Uh,
right. I think
and you would have to win the
um
Territorial Cup too. You would have to. So,
yeah, and I think any hope of some mediocre postseason game comes down to this game against Washington. If they don't win this
100%.
game, and they I mean that leaves them with having to go 5-1 the rest of the way,
Yeah,
which just
that's, yeah.
isn't going to happen. So any hope of a postseason, if you're a big fan of the Bad Boy Mower Bowl or whatever it is, any hope of seeing your precious Devils in the Bad Boy Mower Bowl comes down to this game against Washington.
I don't think the Pac-12 team goes to that bowl, but
Yeah, you just know all of that off the top of your head.
I I actually think I do know that. Yeah. I don't I think that's
Who
like
goes to the Bad Boy Mower Bowl? Is it still even called that?
it's like it's like the Sun Belt versus the MAC or something. Like they would go to like the
Bowl.
Vegas Bowl.
Oh, it's the Gasparilla Bowl now.
Oh, okay.
Wait, renamed as an nod to. Okay, so Union Home Mortgage is now the
Oh,
sponsor. Never mind, I can't keep up. I'm trying to conference tie-ins. Okay, the first three editions featured teams from the CUSA and the Big East. 26. The Bulls 20. As of the 2020 football season, the Bowl has a complex set of tie-ins, such that it could feature teams from 8 different conferences, from the Power Five, ACC, Big 12, Pac 12,
Oh,
SEC. Check
okay.
and mate.
All right. So they have like a six. If 6-6 ASU gets to a bowl game, they could be.
They're
What's it
heading
called? The
down
Union
to
Home Mortgage Bowl or the
it is the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl.
Okay.
It is played at Raymond James Stadium, formerly played at Tropicana Field. So they could be headed down to Tampa if
Not the worst place
they
to go for a bowl game.
no,
There's,
not
there's
at
a bowl
all.
game
But
in Boise, Idaho in December. I'd rather be in Tampa than
yeah, who
Boise.
played in this last year? Oh wait, previous covers. Yeah, the tie-ins are elaborate. Oh, Florida and UCF last year. So this game might be a little too prestigious for ASU. I don't know.
Well, Florida was 6-6 last year, so it would be
Oh, and UCF.
it,
UCF
if this
beat them.
does happen, it would be Emory Jones' second straight trip to that bowl.
Oh man, you know he wants to go back to the Gasparilla Bowl,
Yeah, totally.
the
I mean,
Duke's
like
Bowl.
in all seriousness, like where this team is like right now and like the perception of the team and just everything that's happened, like even going to just some weird bowl game would actually be like a huge success.
Yeah, and it all comes down to this week, Mark.
It does. Yeah. So, um, I think ASU loses 37-24. What about you?
Give me that's a good prediction. I'll go I'll go 35-20.
It feels like I would say it feels like it has a chance to be like an NFL blowout and not like a college blowout, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. So we'll
Wait,
see what
what's the
happens.
total? Oh, 57. 35-20. All right, you know what? Just for the sake of the over, I'm going 23 to 35.
Ooh,
And it
okay.
goes over by a point. How's
That would
that?
be that would be enticing. Um, some interesting news happened over the weekend. There's another open job in the Pac-12. We've been talking about how bad Colorado is, and they decided to fire Carl Durrell, and they are now joining the coaching search. That move was kind of expected. What was not expected was Wisconsin firing Paul Christ and entering into the coaching search. So with those moves, ASU joins Nebraska, Georgia Tech, and Colorado and Wisconsin in the as the Power Five schools looking for head coaches. So more competition to get to get a good coach. Although I don't think Colorado, like ASU, is a better job than Colorado, but it's interesting that just more and more jobs are opening, and the one that everyone thinks is going to open to Auburn still hasn't opened yet. So uh, it's just more and more competition for coaches. So that's definitely
How,
interesting.
how'd you feel about Michael Crow saying Deion Sanders, and without saying that Deion Sanders might not be qualified for the ASU job,
Right.
basically saying that he wasn't qualified? How'd you feel about that,
I
Mark?
don't like it, but I like that. I
He
guess
was
because I know the
acknowledged.
interview you're talking about.
Yeah,
I like that Michael Crow at least seems to be engaged in this and like seems to care. I mean, maybe he always has. It just sometimes doesn't feel that way, but um, we'll see. Maybe hey, maybe he's throwing everyone off the scent.
yeah, that's a good point. Hey, he's acknowledged him, which is good.
Exactly. So and it's the way he spoke because it was that was an interview with Arizona Sports, right? That he was on.
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, the way the way the quote he said in the quote, it was like that people had been bringing it up to him. So maybe the boosters really want him, which I would not hate. um,
that would be a wild hire. Or I saw today, obviously Mike Norvell's name was floated, and it's like, does he really leave Florida State for
no.
ASU? I don't think so.
Also, he's Florida State's been good this year, so I don't
Yeah,
know why.
they're having a good season. I doubt that happens, but he's another name that was floated. I think there was one more. I'm trying to remember, and it was a guy with ASU ties, I think, and I'm
Is it
oh, it
Dillingham?
was, yeah, the Oregon offensive
Yeah,
coordinator. What did you say his name was?
Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah, yeah, that's who it was.
I'd be fine with him. And he was a GA under the Graham staff, and I think he's from Arizona, and from what I've read, like he is very connected within the high school coaching, Arizona high school coaching community, and seemed to be. I read somewhere that like he was actually has some connections with boosters as well. So that Dillingham would make sense if they brought him in, even though he's pretty inexperienced, but does have the offensive bent that I'm looking for. So
Yeah, Mark, can I try one of your patented segues real quick?
sure.
Speaking of bringing people in, Shaun Aguano brought in some recruits to
Right.
practice this week. How's that?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
had
that picture's
and
wild.
I
Like,
yeah, for what we're talking about, this was on Wednesday. Iguano had it was like 60 of the top in-state recruits from the classes of 23, 24, and 25 into the morning practice. And if you check out Arizona Sports 360 AZ, their Twitter account, they have a picture of it. It's just a lot of high school recruits just talking or like listening to a speech with Iguano. And this is like this is just so encouraging to see, like prioritize Arizona recruits. I just the fact that the last staff didn't do that is just so mind-boggling to me. I know that they focused on California, but they also, like, from what people have said, like the Arizona coaches felt like they were like disrespected by the last staff, and it's like that's what bothers me so much is like just have good relationships with people. Iguano does that.
yeah, definitely. He seems like a likable guy, so
And
that's good.
honestly, like after just seeing some of that and seeing the way, again, just for me, the way the team played against USC, like Iguano's not my first choice to be the head coach, but if he does end up being the head coach, I don't think it's like a disaster just because of all the connections he has with um, the Arizona and Phoenix based high school coaches. And apparently they really like him too. Like, I mean, that makes sense. Like anything you've heard from Iguano, it just seems like a really nice guy. Um, but also like clearly he has success running a program, obviously not a college program, but high school. And, like we talked about in one of our previous episodes, Chandler wasn't always the powerhouse that it is now. And that all that credit goes to Iguano. Um, so that's a good, it's one thing to take over, like, I don't know, like some elite private school that, recruits players and does all that and be a great high school program. But it's one thing to build it up at a public school.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's just so encouraging to see um, all these recruits watching practice and being focused in on, and it's also just like I feel like if Iguano's doing this, like I feel like it signifies that even if they do have another head coach, that he might remain on staff.
Yeah, definitely. I think he should, especially, well, I guess it's not solidified yet, but um I think he has a chance this season to, I mean, he was already on staff. He's already
Yeah,
running back coach, so he has a chance this season to build on that and maybe even, depending on how the offense plays, land an offensive coordinator job, something like that, depending on who gets brought in.
right.
But at the very least, a role on this staff.
Yeah, and well, and he's been. It's not like has only been a college coach for like a year and is fresh
Mhm.
out of high school. He's been on the staff for like 3, 4 years. He knows the college game, And the running backs have been the best like position at ASU even this year.
Yeah.
Like Balde and Ngata are like the bright spots of the team right now. I know there's been some other guys, but they've both been really good, and that I can't just ignore that when it comes to Aguano. And I mean, even last year, Rashad White really, I mean, he was awesome, and I trust Iguano, and while I would rather have, gun to my head, I'd rather have like a Dion or um, if Matt Rule gets fired by the Panthers. Which hey, thank you Cardinals for playing a not very good game at all last week and still beating the Panthers.
Yeah.
If Matt Rule like if there's a obvious choice, I would rather they go with that, but if it does just end up being Iguano, I'm not going to be like super upset, like I said, just because of all the high school recruiting connections, all the other stuff he brings. Um, I just don't. What I don't like about the Iguano conversation is so many not so many, but a good chunk of ASU fans being like, "Oh, let's root for him to get the job," and he's a nice guy, so he should get the job after this. It's like, no, he still needs to prove like they can't just finish 2-10 this year and he gets the job. So again, we'll see what happens the rest of the year, but it's
Yes,
just all
Marcus,
this
you
is
said it.
interest. What?
No, sorry. I was just agreeing with you, Mark. Don't worry.
But yeah, and especially with more coaching jobs coming open, um, that does throw a wrench into this, because ASU is not the best job available.
Yeah, probably not.
It's not the worst
I
job, not
It's
the
not the
worst job.
worst, but what would you say is number one?
In terms of the best,
Yeah, like the most desirable one. I'm
I would
thinking
say,
Wisconsin.
yeah, I would say if and when Auburn opens, they'll be the best job because they have the capability of winning a national championship. Um,
Hmm.
although I think it's extremely tough to win a natty there. Like Cam Newton, like arguably the best college football player of all time, was the reason they won their last one. But it
Yeah.
happened, and so you have proof of concept there. So they're number one, I think, but that job's not open. So as of right now, I think Wisconsin is number one.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah, because they'd
Do you think
have.
ASU is like two?
I think you. I think.
Take Auburn out of the equation.
Yeah,
Just
I'm not.
open
Yeah, yeah.
jobs right now.
I think one could argue that ASU is two. I would still have Nebraska above ASU, just because, Nebraska, again, being in the Big Ten, more money, they have a more passionate fan base. Like no one's gonna
Hmm.
know,
They're
argue
like
that.
starved for any.
Um,
They're starved for like an 8-4 season.
dude, they're starved for what ASU has been the last 10 years.
I know it's
It's
crazy.
so weird. Like I get that Nebraska is in like a very geographically isolated area for finding college football talent, but I just don't know how they could have been not even like average in the past decade. They've been losing seasons every single year. But with all that said, the reason I have them ahead of ASU is just because in the NIL world, they just have more money to play with, and so that that just gives them that just makes them a better job. But
Do
I
you
I
know
could
Warren
listen to the
Buffett
art.
went there?
What?
I said, you know Warren Buffett went there? I just Googled him.
Oh, did he? I know he's from
Yeah.
Nebraska.
Warren Buffett went to the University of Nebraska. The more you know.
Yeah. Um, but I could listen to the argument of someone saying that ASU is a better job just because there's more talent. And I guess having like not a crazy fan base is probably appealing to some college football coaches. Um, so maybe with that aspect to it. But the main reason for ASU potentially being a better job than Nebraska, which I don't agree with, but would just be the local recruiting talent and closer to California and all that stuff. So, but I do think ASU is at worst the third best job available
Yeah.
because some people would say Georgia Tech is better because they're in Atlanta, but Georgia Tech, it's tough to get in there, and that limits the pool of kids you can actually have on a football team. Um, and I was listening to Cover 3 podcast, and one of their hosts, Bud Elliott, was mentioning that not only is it tough to get kids in there because of academics, they also don't have like an easy major that they can dump all these kids, dump some
Oh,
college
like
football players into.
communications or something.
Yeah, not yeah, exactly. Whereas at ASU, you have those everywhere, and it really most Power Five schools you have those type of degrees that you can have kids go into if they wouldn't have gotten into the school otherwise. So I don't. I think and like as bad as ASU is right now, Georgia Tech has been like an ASU level team for the past like 3 years, and so that takes time to get out from. You know? And Georgia Tech, I think they play Georgia and Clemson every single year.
I mean,
So
probably Clemson. I don't know about Georgia.
no, because that's their in-state rival, even though they're not in the same conference.
Really? Okay.
So if you're Georgia Tech, you're starting the year until the foreseeable future with 2 losses already. That like
Yeah, I
that's
guess
tough.
that's true. They do play
Um,
Georgia.
and
Yeah,
Clemson.
that
That's a
sucks.
big bowl.
And Clemson. Oh wait, University of Georgia athletics football history. Yeah, they play them every year. 22,
Yeah,
20.
that would not be fun.
That's
Um,
terrible.
yeah, and then Colorado, like they're the worst job on the board. Like
Oh yeah.
I was listed. Apparently, Colorado's had one top 25 season in the past 20 years, or something like that, and that's so bad.
Was
Like,
it that year that they had what was his name? Montez?
yeah, well, it was the one year that they played for the Pac-12 championship game. They had a ton of that team had like Tedrick Thompson and Chidobe Awuzie.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that team had a ton of seniors. It was just a
Was Philip Lindsay on that team?
I think Philip Lindsay was on that team. They had Cepho Lufau as their quarterback, Tacoma native.
Mm.
So that was a really good team, but it's literally been their one good year that they've had in like 20 years. And we complain about ASU, but they've had scattered top 25 appearances in that span. And they also haven't been like Colorado's gone like 1-11 a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Like that is just
ASU peaked at number 6 in the poll. I mean, that's solid.
yeah, our freshman year, I remember that. But and the other thing is like Colorado, like if you're that bad for that long, like that's really gonna have adverse effects future. And another thing about Colorado that people don't think about is like a lot of people are like, "Oh, Boulder's a beautiful place, and how could it be hard to attract talent there?" And I agree with them to a point on that. But also, like if you look at the states that surround Colorado, there's almost no high school talent. I mean, they're next to Wyoming and New Mexico, Kansas. But whereas ASU in Arizona yourself, you have a bunch of talent, or a good amount at least. Uh, and you're right next to Southern California, and even Vegas is close to you too. So like, there's just easier like on paper recruiting options you have here as opposed to Colorado. So we'll see what I mean. They could very easily hire a better coach than us in this cycle, and you know turn all this conversation around. But uh, right now, it just feels it would not be fun to be a Colorado fan. We're ASU
Yeah, no.
fans, so
Yeah, either way, that's two terrible places to be in.
yeah, very true. Very true.
All
All
right,
right.
Mark, what do you
Well,
say we wrap this up? Go watch some
yeah,
football.
that's what I was gonna recommend. Yeah. So, anything else you want to add as we close out? Just final
No,
thoughts.
no, Mark, I think we just about covered it. Yeah, nothing from me.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching or listening, everyone, and go Devils. This is Mark Harris with Colton Dodgson on the
The
Stomping.
real Mark Harris.